Peter King of the MMQB.com. I assume you, like me, say amen to that. Correct, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I wondered how close we were going to get to the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
We got pretty close, but I think, Rich, what this proves, once and for all, is that the the discipline system in the NFL is broken. The process of disciplining players, I think, is broken. I think two things stand out about this to me. One, Richard Berman did not rule on any piece of evidence in his three major points. It was all legal points why he overturned the Brady suspension. That they wouldn't allow him to interview Jeff Pash. They basically that he was never told that he was in danger of a 4-game suspension if he fiddled with the footballs. And those are legal arguments. But I've said it for months now. I mean, the case to suspend Tom Brady was weak in the first place. And, if that ever gets a full airing, and Lord help us if it does, but if it ever gets a full airing, I don't know how this stands up. I really don't. I don't know how in a court Tom Brady could be convicted of anything based on what I read in the Wells report and since then.
But as you said, Peter, it wasn't the Wells report that was on trial. It was the fact that it was a Pash Wells report in the mind of Richard Berman is what was technically on trial.
Well, obviously, because what he made this point very clear that before this report was put out, that and Wells seemed to make light of it. Obviously, in this. In Berman's ruling today, where Wells is sort of making light about, Jeff Pash and his Harvard education and how, and how he has an opinion on everything, basically. And there's no question in Wells's mind from what he testified that it sounds very clear to me that some parts of this report, of the Ted Wells report, were edited by Jeff Pash when the NFL got a whack at it before it was released. So that's why it's very clear. You can't consider this an independent report if the NFL is making changes to it once it's been filed with the NFL.
All right, so let's talk about moving forward. Peter King of the MMQB.com joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show, also a football night in America. What does Robert Kraft do with that $1 million fine and the draft picks that have been docked?
He's in a weird spot here, obviously, because he has already said we're not going to contest it, we'll take our punishment. But it does seem to me that if the NFL loses the ability to punish Brady, and going forward, if Brady eventually is found innocent of these charges against what the NFL has suspended him for, I think if I were Robert Kraft, I would say, hey, listen, our 2016 draft should stay intact. We should not lose the 1 and the 4. Maybe we lose the 1 and the 4 at some point going forward, but I don't think if Tom Brady eventually is not sanctioned at all for this, why on God's green earth are the Patriots docked a 1 and a 4 and $1 million?
Well, the question is, Peter, also, is that if he isn't made whole in that regard, he is still one of the most powerful owners in the sport, if not the most. Does he exact his pound of flesh on the commissioner's staff in some way, shape, or form, Peter?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, Rich. I think that, look, it's very clear by Robert Kraft's statements and actions since then is that he's very uncomfortable being Al Davis. Very. And so, look, I don't know whether he would say, look, we have to move to make major changes in the staff at the NFL. Could Jeff Pash's job be in jeopardy? Maybe. Could Roger Goodell's job be in jeopardy? I doubt it still, but it's absolutely not out of the question now based on the last year plus of, legal smackdown. So you ask a good question, Rich, and I think it's a little bit too early to tell but I think everything is on the table right now.
Well, Peter King joining me here on the program. What is on the table in terms of fixing what you said is a broken system of player discipline and adjudicating the matter? What is on the table there?
Rich, I think what I would do if I were Roger Goodell is I would basically, I mean, look, the league office is on fire right now. It just, there has to be a way for the NFL to be able to repair a broken system of discipline that has been broken for years in the NFL. And the way to repair it is for Roger Goodell to do something that a great leader would do. And a great leader would say, this is not working. We're going to change it. We're not going to wait till the next negotiations open in 2020 for a new CBA. We're not going to wait. We can't wait that long. We're not waiting 5 years. In my opinion, I think Roger Goodell has to go to his owners, and he has to say, look, we have to make peace with the players. Even though we can run the game the way it's been run, it's not working. That, in my opinion, is what a good leader would do. I'm not saying he will do it, but I think he should do it.
And when it's all said and done, Brady is now somebody who doesn't serve a single day of a suspension for this. He has served many, many, many days in the crosshairs of the court of public opinion. How do you feel that court will handle this this very famous and highly decorated football player, Peter?
Rich, I said when this thing happened, the thing that really bothered me about this is that the second paragraph of his New York Times obituary, his ultimate legacy, is going to be that Tom Brady's a cheater. And now I'm happy for him because it was never proven that he directed anybody to do anything. But now I would think that that flies out the window. I mean, the story isn't over yet. It really isn't. But I do think for Brady's sake, he gets his legacy back, relatively speaking, intact. If indeed the process continues to play out and the NFL continues to lose, that's what I believe is going to happen.
And I'd be remiss, Peter, if I didn't ask you actually a football question, because tonight the preseason comes to a close. What should we be looking at tonight, Peter? Jarryd, Hayne, Tebow, or those guys have earned roster spots or haven't? What should we be looking for, Peter?
It sounds like the 49ers are leaning very strongly toward keeping Jarryd Hayne, which they should, I think. He's such an interesting wild card. Obviously he's a rugby league player from Australia who never played down a football until, I guess, around April in a minicamp. So I think he is going to have a spot on the Niners. I think a couple of the interesting things to watch, I think you have to watch the Seattle Seahawks offensive line and see if they do anything, go out and try to make a move to help Russell Wilson. I think you have to watch one other thing in Seattle. Can John Schneider help Cam Chancellor save face so that he shows up next Tuesday and he and Earl Thomas return to play in the secondary together a week from Sunday in St. Louis?
Yeah, that Greg Bishop article about the retreat in Hawaii, Peter, that was an eye-opener, to say the least, because it seemed like the quote from that piece that jumped out at me was Doug Baldwin saying that he didn't know if this retreat in which they were all hashing out the problems from the Super Bowl loss and everything else, if it still worked, that he didn't know if this has been put to bed yet, Peter.
Well, I think the one thing in Seattle that, I was in their camp, I get the sense that, that one of the reasons that John Schneider really can't do anything about Cam Chancellor is that they have so many really, really good young players. And he's got to address as many of them as he can, but there's no way he can address one that has 3 years left on his contract. That's what makes this unique. Cam Chancellor is a huge leader on that team, and he's not going to walk in having gotten no concessions, from the Seahawks. So I think that in the next few days, now that the Brady thing has been resolved, that's the biggest question, I think, hanging over the game.
Before I let you go, RG3, once he's cleared from his concussion, does he get released right away? Do you think the Redskins actually, even with a $16.1 million price tag, if he gets hurt, hanging over their heads, holds on to him as some form of an insurance policy for Jay Gruden, who clearly has moved on from him? I mean, what do you make of this, Peter?
I think Jay Gruden and Scott McCloughan have to convince the owner that it's a mistake to keep him around, because it'll just be a constant, it's clear, it's very clear that the general manager and the coach of this team want somebody else to play quarterback. And so why keep the guy around knowing that his presence is really going to be a huge distraction long term with this team? They can say it won't be, but it will be, because Kirk Cousins' history is that he might play well for a couple of games, but at some point he's going to struggle. Colt McCoy's history is that he might play well for a while, but he's going to struggle. So, I mean, you have to ask yourself this question: do you always want this almost Tebow-like presence on your team for the rest of the year? Do you want that? I wouldn't want it if I were Washington. I think it distracts from any decent chance they have to win.
And do you think there's going to be an actual Tebow presence on the Eagles by the end of the cuts?
I get the feeling that he's not going to make it, Rich, but I do think that Chip Kelly is fascinated by him, likes him a lot, and might keep him. But I just get the feeling that they're going to keep Barkley as the third quarterback.
And deep down, Peter, are you going to miss Deflategate? Are you going to miss it? I mean, like
I
feel
miss
a
it
void
already. I mean, I
there's
can't
a void.
believe it's gone. I want to read more about it. I did an event last night, Rich, in Boston for a brain tumor charity at the Harpoon Brewery, and we had 285 people in there talking football. And I think there were 3 questions in 2 hours that had nothing to do with Deflategate.
There's going to be a void, Peter. Come on, you're a Red Sox guy. You know that all that the curse and all that stuff of the Bambino. Once you won championships, that it left a void, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, I'm happy that we might be able to focus on 1 or 2 other things before the start of the season.
Peter, thanks for calling in. You're the best. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thank you, Rich.
You
Bye.
bet. At SI_Peter King.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.